so we got the cord. All right. Well, we're ready to roll. Kaylee, welcome. Thanks for coming in. There's our Q&As popping in here. Leamington, Ontario, Winnipeg, Manitoba.
Love it.
Oh my God, St. Catharines, Ontario.
All my favorite places. I think I have some guesses on who some of these people might be.
Potentially. Bolton, Mass, Oxford, England.
Awesome.
Yeah, wide variety. So two-time All-American, Hamilton College, former national team member, former Northman.
Former Northman. I was in Excelsior for a little while too before I left officially.
All right. So welcome aboard. I'm going to turn the controls over to you pretty quick because, it's your presentation, and I don't want to waste time on this because I heard great things about your OLA presentation last week, which was awesome. I'm pretty tight with some of those guys, and it was I kind of knew it, but I didn't want to say anything. So, I was really happy because it was yourself and girl from Owen Sound. I can't remember.
Lindsay Brooks, the Team Ontario coach.
Yeah, so that's awesome. And we wanted to mix content. This was what this whole summit was about. We didn't want it just explicitly box, field, men's, women's. We wanted a great variety. We've had some off floors, some grow the game roots. We've had men's, women's field, men's, women's box. And we're getting into everything. Tonight we've got an official coming on because we love officials. We got to.
I am one of those sort of, although less and less these days.
Yeah. And then Sean Nadlin comes on talking about being a D1 athlete tonight. So got a wide variety today, and we're really happy to have you here. So I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm turning it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here. So just to give a little background on what we're doing here, I'm thinking you guys should be able to see my screen now, but if there's any issues, let me know.
No, you're good.
Perfect. Okay, so the cool thing I think about this presentation is that we're talking about, it's sort of like everything you're going to see are female athletes of mine, but you can run this in field, you can run this in box, gender really doesn't matter. This is just about sharpening your saw as a lacrosse player to be the best that you can possibly be. So while we are talking about fundamentals, we're going to kind of bring it back at the end to bring it into gameplay to teach you how you can sort of implement these drills and these skills into your gameplay to help make you a better overall player. So just quick background on me. I grew up in Orangeville. I started playing box lacrosse when I was 3 because I have older brothers and a dad who are into it. And I thought if they get to do all this cool stuff, I want to do it too. So I kind of jumped in there. We started girls lacrosse in Orangeville when I was in the 5th grade. So I was doing both and a little bit of boys field for a little while. I stopped growing, and if you've met my mother, you know that she's 4'9". So there wasn't really much for me once the boys started to shoot up, and focused exclusively on girls lacrosse. Made my way down to Hamilton College in upstate New York. And since then, I've been in Germany coaching. I've been in Massachusetts now for about 8 years or so. My husband and I live just outside of Boston. So I coach at Lincoln Sudbury Regional High School, which is kind of a big athletic school in the area. It's a public school. And then I own Central Lacrosse along with my business partner, Melissa Rausch, and run the day-to-day there. So we do camps and clinics. We have club teams, and mostly I just like to talk about lacrosse. So I'm super excited to kind of jump into this. So we're going to start out just talking about the fundamentals of stick work. And I think one of the interesting things specifically about women's lacrosse, sorry, I need my stick here, that's a little different is, in my opinion, women's lacrosse started out trying to not be men's lacrosse a little bit. So when I first started playing, one of my biggest frustrations, other than like the obvious wear a mouth guard, no hitting, no pockets, skirts, which was quite the adjustment for me at the beginning, I was really struggling with sort of the specific things that people wanted from me on a girls' field, where I was told, you have to hold your stick like this, you have to cradle this way, you have to shoot like that. If you're on my OLA webinar, I told this story, but the first behind the back goal I ever scored in girls lacrosse, I got a yellow card for. strictly because the official said to me that you shouldn't, they called me box girl, which I thought was a compliment, but that you shouldn't be taking those shots because they're dangerous. And I am a huge believer that the more creative, the better. I mean, we obviously want to keep everybody safe, but if you watch the game now, it's not structured, and these women are just as skilled and just as creative as the men's side. So we try to kind of teach that in what we do. So I wanted to start first just talking a little bit about the bare bones basics and trying to dispel a couple of myths. And the big one is, most of you have probably heard open and close the gate. So we have, you know, people cradling. You guys can see me as well, right? I'm not just cradling into the wind, hopefully.
You're good.
So perfect. So we teach girls to open and close the gate and do this. And the issue with it is sort of twofold. A, I'm wasting a lot of energy just running. If you try running up and down the field doing this furiously, you're going to find that you get pretty tired pretty quick. And B, if I'm going to throw or shoot or fake, I'm going to have to get big anyway. So what we stress with our kids, and what I would encourage, especially any of you guys that are players or coaches out there, is to stop teaching open and close the gate. And I would almost say get away from teaching cradling at all and just kind of let kids figure it out. So we talk about grip because if you're opening and closing the gate, you're holding it in your fingertips. And if you do that and then you try to get yourself ready to score, you're going to find that your stick goes from being in your fingertips to being in the middle of your hand. We want to be in the middle of our hand in order to be ready to throw. So we basically just want to cut out the middleman here. We're going to hold our stick in either triple threat, ready to score, and that's the cue I use with all, just hold your stick ready to score. They'll figure it out. You don't need to be cranking it over. Just hold it ready to score. And that's going to give them a really simple cue to get into this great grip position. And from there, they can do anything that they want. The other cue that we'll use sometimes is double threat, which is a little bit more of a boys saying, but it's just holding your stick in front of you, usually when I'm square with a defender like this. So kind of two big ones that we want to focus on when we're teaching, and please let open and close the gate die. It's time. The other piece to open and close the gate in terms of setting kids up for less success at the next level is at the youth level, I run down the field like this and a defender makes contact with me that I've initiated because I've kind of gone towards her. Most of the time at the youth level, because we just can't handle our sticks and because we're trying to keep the game safe, that's going to be a whistle and the defender is going to be punished. The problem is that when I get to better levels, that's never, ever, ever going to be a whistle. And I've left myself susceptible to being hit because my hands are in front of me. Instead, we want to teach kids to be in triple threat. And now I'm giving my forearm or maybe my hip as the point of contact with the defender, which is going to keep that ball safe. Even if it's getting hit, the ball's going to sit in my pocket. So huge advantage to get comfortable playing a little bit bigger. The other piece is efficiency. With this big cradle and sort of use of energy in front of us, we see a lot of kids kind of catch like that as well, which A, is really challenging, B, is going to leave you susceptible to a check, and C, is slow because you're going to have to get big to make a move anyway. So we try to really focus with our kids on slowing down the stick work. We don't want to cradle, or at minimum, we want to do it as little as possible. And with catching, we just want to focus on just giving. So ball's coming in, I'm not making any turning motion. I'm going to watch it in, get to triple threat. And then with throwing, and this will come up a little bit as we go, one of the big challenges we see more so with girls is sort of the throw like a girl phenomenon, where a lot of girls throw from in here with a baseball. And when it comes to stick work, it's the same idea. Instead of being up and big back here where they can generate power, they throw off of their shoulders. So we want to really emphasize efficient stick movements, proper grip, and being nice and big when you're ready to throw.
Kaylee, if I could ask a question, just
please.
There's some, they're kind of like me where they've seen women's lacrosse, they could step in, but I'm not so familiar with some of the rules for the younger girls.
Yep.
Is there a regulation limit to the length of a stick? Because I've seen pictures lately with younger girls with really long shafts, and all I can get through my head is the box side of me going, man, you got to cut that down. But
you are spot on. So we do have rules about the minimums. The U.S. lacrosse and the international rule are different. So I'm not sure the exact number on that, but what I can tell you is that there's also a concession in the game where our kind of rule of thumb that we use when we're just saying to the average mom or dad who've bought a stick is basically put it in your armpit like this. That's the length roughly. You may want to add an inch or two because your child's probably going to grow, but that would sort of be my ideal shaft length. And if by chance you do cut it down, as long as it's within that distance, and if I have an OWFL ref on here, let me know if I'm wrong. But my most recent experience with officiating in Ontario, actually with the international rules and with US lacrosse rules, is that there's a concession just to allow you to do that. So if you're beneath high school level and you're playing with a shaft that's full length, I would highly advocate for cutting it down to help yourself learn how to control it. Does that kind of help with that, or is there any other rule things you want to chat about?
No, that was, you know what, this picture just reminded me of it. And then when you were talking about it, I just, one of the Twitter accounts that followed the Lacrosse Summit, I saw it on Twitter and I clicked on the picture, and that's the first thing that I saw in my head was, I don't know the rules. So that's why I was thinking to myself, maybe she needs to keep it that length. I'm not quite sure.
No, and we definitely, I would say, like, if you walk to a youth field, we think the same. We see all these kids with like what looks like a long pole because of their size, and we're like, oof, let's find a hacksaw and cut that thing down.
Gotcha. I'll keep one in my car.
So here's a quick, simple drill. This one is more geared towards youth players, but just a really easy way, especially if you have kids that you sort of need to unteach the habits of cradling with. We call this quarterback running back. So when this athlete's coming forward, she's the running back. When she's the quarterback, I used to be able to say she was Tom Brady, but we can't say that in New England anymore. I don't know, somebody dropping back into the pocket and throwing. So you'll see she stays pretty much in triple threat this whole time, minimal stick movement, and she's ready to throw. So this is a really easy one. You can add in a dodge to it. You can add a shot at the end. It's also got a great conditioning component. So our kids don't love this one, but it's a great way to teach the skill. And then further to that, just kind of wanted to throw out a little idea for some partner passing here. So these two particular players are from my high school. Number 6, who's running, is going to Michigan next year. And number 4 has one more year of high school remaining. She'll be going to Stanford. So obviously very high caliber stick work here, but this is one of our favorite, maybe not theirs, but one of my favorite partner passing drills, so that we can just rep out fundamentals. And you see, like, they're doing pump fakes here, so there's a little bit of stick movement, but everything is pretty efficient. They're off their bodies, there's minimal cradling, and everything they're doing, they're trying to catch ready to score. This is a nice one too. I know we're in quarantine, so just as a thought for the players on here, you got a friend that can do this with you, or a sibling, that's great. If not, use a rebounder and you can be doing the same thing, getting some conditioning in, getting some stick work, and really the sky's your limit in terms of what stick drills you can do out of this. Catch left, throw right, catch right, throw left, BTBs, underhands, anything goes. You just can really challenge yourself with this, just doing 1-minute sets. So kind of in the same vein, we're going to talk a little bit about finishing, because I think it's something that we just don't hone in on quite enough. Like we say, like, shoot to score, shoot low. But really, like, watching a large amount of girls lacrosse players over the last 15 years, we don't see a ton of girls that are just lights out finishers. So I kind of wanted to touch on some little things that we can be teaching as coaches and you guys can be doing as players to help make yourself a better finisher. Numero uno probably goes without saying, but it's about repetition. If you want to be a great shooter, you got to be hitting the net every day, hundreds of shots. I would say no amount is too many. And I always tell my players, especially some of my private clients, that we do a lot of specific shooting work. You're never good enough at shooting. There are always going to be things. You could take Paul Rabel and we're going to still be tweaking little things about his technique. So I would encourage you that 10,000 hours isn't nearly enough. The more you're shooting, the better. And your number one tip for this, as simple as it sounds, is get as many balls as humanly possible. And if you don't have $1 million, because buying cases of lacrosse balls can be really expensive, tennis balls are an awesome alternative. If you can convince someone to play net, they're going to appreciate that more, but just get yourself tons of balls, tons of reps so that you're not wasting time. And we do the same thing in our practices. I have the benefit of working at a tennis club, so I get a lot of old balls for free. But when we roll into a practice that's going to be like shooting and goalies, you probably have like 2,000 balls. So I would highly recommend adding that to your repertoire, because it'll make you get so much more done in less time, which is huge. When you're working on your shots, definitely want to make sure that they're game-like. So, you know, if you're a female player who's practicing shooting from the 12, I appreciate the fire, but unless you are a freak of nature, that's not a realistic shot that you're going to take. And it would be very challenging for you to physically generate the power that you need. There are some that can do it, but those are like the Michael Jordans of our sports. We want to really concentrate on taking shots that we're going to take in a game. And then most importantly is variety. You don't want to be a one-trick pony. You've got to be able to do a ton of different types of shots. And you really want to make yourself, my goal was always to be unscoutable. So you think I'm going to fake high, shoot low? No problem. Next one, I'm going to do the opposite. And we're going to dig in a little bit on that subject just to kind of coach you guys up on some specific types of shooting. So first thing we're going to look at is the time and room shot. Again, women's game doesn't happen quite as often as it does in the men's game because of our shooting space rules, but when you have an opportunity, you want to make it stick. Well, jumping ahead here. So this one's slowed down a little bit, but you're going to watch her hands come back off her body, a nice crow hop behind. And the big thing that we talk about is just this rotation. So her shoulders start from opening to a sideline and they rotate all the way through to the other sideline. Her right leg kicks through, so she's generating power from the ground up, which you can see one more time, which is a huge piece to generating power in a shot, particularly as a female where our arms just aren't that strong. Big step, big transfer of weight, big kick through, and she looks cool doing it. It actually goes through the net, which is definitely why she sent me this one. So that's one version. Same concept, but now we're going to look at a couple of different variations of on-the-move shooting. So I would highly suggest teaching kids to shoot on the run and then getting into time and room, because it's really challenging for kids to start moving their feet. And I say this from experience as someone who spent their first 2 years of college getting yelled at to move my feet. But doing it on the run can be a bit of a challenge because it can feel a little bit awkward. This one here is another great form drill. So this player is actually an ACL rehab. So she's just on her way back from a knee. We're working on getting her arms off of her body, getting big height and length. And then here's another version. But every time you're going to notice with these girls, they're opening their shoulders up, they're rotating their bodies through, they're pulling hard with their bottom hands, and they're getting power on the ball. You want to be able to do both of these things and I would say like an on-the-run shot is probably the most common shot that we see in the women's game, particularly at the higher levels, because defense just starts to get better and refs let you get away with a little more. So now talking about a finesse game where you get opportunities inside, in front of the goal. First one we're going to talk about is a dip and dunk. So we are dipping low to fake the goalie low, bringing our hands up high and dunking over top of her. Here's, every time. Here's a quick look at that. Keeps her feet moving. We stress big time when we're finishing toes, knees, hips, chest to the goal. And you notice that she's square the whole time, which is going to give her the opportunity to send it where she wants and see what is available to her around the goalkeeper. These drills are always, always, always better with a goalie. And I do think it's fair to say that there's a bit of a limit in effectiveness without playing on a live goalkeeper. But at the end of the day, get reps in and then play as much as you possibly can. And if you can find a goalie that'll jump in for you, be nice to that person because they're the best around. Here's the opposite. I will say that potentially if I was reffing, that may have been a charge, but we've got a fake high shoot low here, so a little contact. She gets open, she's surprised too, fake, reach around. And the thing that I really like about this clip, and that probably you can't really state enough, is the way that she uses her stick to extend. So we always say we want our sticks to the middle because our stick has eyes. Right now, that angle that she's standing on, Megan Taylor's the best goalie in the country. You could even argue in the world. She's got her beat. Instead, Kenzie Kent uses her stick to reach around her, extend, and we've got ourselves a goal. And this was the national championship, so definitely a big one. Last, kind of the next layer up. So I'm a huge proponent in creative shooting. I believe all three, so twisters, leaners, and BTBs. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, don't worry, we're going to break it down for you. But I firmly believe, I don't know if you can see that or not, hopefully you can't. My email just opened for some reason. Get rid of that.
Great.
Okay, there we go. Just in case you're wondering if anybody needs my attention. But I firmly believe that these are fundamental shots. It's not just fancy. It's not just something you should be pulling when you're up by 100. It's something that as coaches, we should work into our practice plan so that the players feel confident pulling it in game situations. And it's something that can really give you a better opportunity if the defense has put you in a certain situation. So we'll start with twisters. So twister is our version of a curveball. If you have this will play through slow a couple times. But basically, she's bringing her stick primarily using her bottom hand across her nose and snapping back. Oftentimes, Americans call this a Canadian. I don't, because I know Canadians can switch hands, but this is not the same shot. So this one, the goalie can kind of see that it's coming straight on. A twister presents an illusion that it's going to come to this side, and then you snap back at the last second. So you'd end up shooting to the same side your stick started on. A leaner is a body fake. So we looked previously at at like little pump fakes, little dips, little dunks. Leaner is exclusively a body fake. So some of my players call this the dab shot. And the reason is basically what you're going to see happen is this player, who's actually a freshman of mine and has one of the best leaners I've ever seen, she runs straight down. She's going to tuck her head, and we always say like tuck violently, because that head fake is going to make the goalie think you're going low. And then looking over your forearm, you're going to snap your wrist and try to shoot high. Let's have a look at it. It's a subtle fake, but man, does it work. You can see here, it'll slow down for you, but that forearm comes up, that chin drops, and having seen this girl pull it against 8th grade goalies last year, I can tell you that it sells and it works. So this is another great one. Off an 8-meter, deadly shot, because you only got a couple of steps that you need to take, and you can really freeze that goalie, put her down, and then send it up high. And this is one version of a leaner, but you could do it. Some people call them, there's like anti-leaners. You can do it anyway. So maybe I want to shoot to the left. I lean right, use my body just to buy myself a second and get that shot off. So those are great ones to play around with. And then lastly, the behind the back shot. We push our players to be two-handed, but if you can stay in your strong hand, always better. And this is going to be a great example. So Caroline's going to come down, she drifts off, and typically for a right-handed shot to be on that side of the field, particularly box people are like, oh, we don't like that, stick can't see as much. Going to a behind the back shot here is going to give her stick angle and allow her to reach around the goalie and shoot to the far post. She throws in this cool little low fake as well. It's kind of tricky. So we go from a low angle alley shot to a high angle behind the back shot that might just get you on Sports Center. So we drill these in practice. At least for each skill, we try to get them in at least once a week. And I would strongly encourage you to encourage your players to be more creative. And for you guys that are players, watch those Instagram videos, get outside and practice. I can tell you, we didn't have the sophisticated stuff that you guys have with Instagram and that back in my day, but Mikey Powell played at Syracuse Lacrosse. He did a front flip in a game, and that changed my life, because all of a sudden I was like, oh, okay, we can do tricks. We can try all of these cool things. You can too. And you now have the benefit of being able to watch Dempsey and Sam and Kenzie on Instagram doing all this cool stuff. So watch it, rep it, and practice it. Here's a couple more. So this is a Twizzler, not to be confused with the twister. So it's kind of a backhanded shot. She's going to plant her leg, use her hips to generate power, and then backhand it in. This one's a great one. You can get a ton of power if you spin your legs, and she were to step into that with her right foot, she could grab even more power. And you have a fair amount of control, so you'll be able to put it high, low, and can play around with the posts. And then lastly, we call it a rule. So in all of my programs, we say get weird as a cue in a drill. So just the same way you might say quick sticks or over the shoulders, long, short flip, we say get weird. And that's our cue to our players that we don't care about success rates. We don't care. Doesn't need to be perfect. It can be anything you want. You can get as crazy as you want. We just want you to be goofy, have some fun, and try things that are totally out of your comfort zone. We'll get baseball swings. We'll get cartwheels. I had one kid, the last time I called this, a kid did a pool shot. So she threw it up and then tried to shoot it like that. Will they do it in game? No, but if you can hit a ball with the butt end of your stick, you have hand-eye coordination. And then further, when we start getting into kind of more concrete things like this, she might pull that into game. You don't know. So we got a little split, pass behind the back, and then she's going to go into an around the world shot, which is a behind the back, picking corners there too, which is pretty good. A behind the back going the long way around. So have some fun with it. And that's, as coaches, I think sometimes when we see this, it's really easy to be like, oh God, we're not catching anything. This isn't going great. She's never going to do that in a game. It's fun. So let them have fun, because if kids aren't having fun playing this sport, they're going to choose something else that is fun for them. And B, letting a kid have a little bit of creativity will teach them to do things like this. She's going to Michigan. She was an All-American last year. Will she do it in a game? You know what? I'd be pretty fired up if she did. So take that for what it's worth, but I would strongly encourage you to give kids opportunities to be creative, have a little fun, especially for your multi-sport athletes. They will come up with things that will blow your mind, and it could really just be the next big thing. So lots of fun with that. And then to kind of put it all together here. So yes, we want to build skill, but if we're looking at a practice, or if we're trying to take our game to the next level, and I can already catch and throw with both hands, and I can sort of do most of these shots, you then have to ask the question of, okay, how can I make sure that this applies to my gameplay, and, you know, sort of develop my IQs. And I was talking about like decision making. A great drill is one that has a ton of skills and a decision, because if a player is making a decision, they're in control and they're understanding the concepts. And for coaches who are trying not to go gray, that is a huge piece of it. So how do we do it? Well, first and foremost, we play a lot of man-ups. So we start a lot of our drills, we call 2VO. So if we're doing like fundamental passing, that they're just passing on the move, we call that a 2 versus 0. Then we'll start to ramp it up into 2v1s to add a little defense, but give the offense some time to make decisions. With our younger and less experienced players, and I'm talking even as young as first grade, we'll do things more in like a 3 versus 1 or a 4 versus 1. I get more kids moving, which is always a huge objective of ours in practice, is to make sure that everybody is doing things and not standing in a line. B, it allows them to have the time to be successful while still having a little bit of a competitive balance. And if you've worked with young kids, and you don't know this, let me share my biggest secret sauce: make it competitive. If it's competitive, it's going to be fun for the kids. And that's whether they're 7 or they're 25. They like competition. So we can use these little 1 or 2 defenders to ramp up our skill work, make it a little bit more game-like, and encourage the offense to make a decision. They still have to think about passing around a defender. They still have to read where that second defender is going to decide who's open. But because we're a man down, they have a little bit more time to do it and can find some success. Keep away games are probably the greatest skill accelerator on the planet. We'll show you a couple of our favorite ones in a few minutes. But every day, one of my non-negotiables at my high school, and even with our club program, is there's going to be some form of a keep away game. We'll manipulate it to keep it fresh. Sometimes we play 3 teams. Sometimes we go stronger versus weaker. Sometimes we mix it up, and then we'll go man up, man down, different formats all the time. But like with our little ones, we don't call it monkey in the middle, but we set up a box and we play monkey in the middle with them. If they can't catch, no problem. We're going to do it with ground balls instead. We might do it with a soccer ball with our hands, just to help them get used to catching and throwing. But they're going to have fun. They're going to get better, and practice is going to fly. So, and those are all great ways to get more kids moving too. And then lastly, I'm like a scrimmage hater. I know kids love it. It's funny because if you said that to me as a player, like I was all about playing and scrimmaging, but now I very rarely just will be like, all right, we play 7s in America. I know in Canada it's 6s, so sorry for that. But basically we do a lot of small-sided games, like 3v3 continuous, 4v4 continuous, and then we'll give them some sort of rules. And we'll show you a little bit of that in a second. But as a coach, if you want to get better at picking, great, let's play 3v3 continuous, and you have to set 2 picks on offense in order to be able to score. The kids have a purpose, but it's pretty open-ended, so they don't have to be robots. They get to play, so it's always going to be a win. It's competitive, so they're going to be fired up, and you're going to accomplish what you want because they're learning how to set picks, and they're getting a ton of touches because it's a small game. So we'll jump in here, show you a couple of those. So here's a little shooting. Oh my goodness. Here's a little shooting drill. These two will show you 4 progressions of it. So we call this flip shooting. You can't really see it in the grass, but there's 2 cones here. They're set about 1 meter apart. And the only thing that I say to kids when we do this is both of you need to be in between the cones when you flip. So they have to figure out their timing to both arrive. Sometimes we'll call them gates, but they should be timing it up together. Boom, we got a little flip pass. She turns a corner hard, takes a shot. So the one in gray is Caroline, the one in blue is her sister Lucy. And that was a fake flip there. But you'll notice that each time the player without the ball is also coming off of this ready to go. Once you can do this for shooting reps, once they get the hang of it, you can let them start to live play, and we'll add in a second defender. So at the beginning, a first defender. So at the beginning of this, a defender will stand at the top of the crease. When they start moving, she'll sprint up to the cones, and then she'll be live to play. So it gives them a little bit of a challenge, but again, in a 2-on-1 situation, okay, is she on me? I pass. Is she not? I shoot. And it just helps them develop this IQ while we're still accomplishing, okay, we want to work on our overhand shooting form too. Boom, we're going to do 2v1 flip shooting, and we're going to get a nice bang for our buck that we get better at flip passes, we get better at shooting, and we're getting better at our competitive decision making because we've added in a defender. And we'll do drills like this if you have the luxury of tons of space and tons of fields. I wouldn't go any more than like 8 kids at a cage if you can. Sometimes we're sharing and we do what we got to do. But drills like this are a great one that you can do this for 10 minutes. The kids will be smoked and they'll probably get 100 shots. So 3v2s, this is a 3v2 to cage. I am usually really good at this, but this is not my apparently stopping and starting film is not my forte. So white on offense, 3v2, and the rule that we gave them here is that they have to score off of a give and go. So you're gonna see, there'll be more of these playing through, but you'll see 24 here, pass, cut the middle, get it back, and get a great shot. So the rule that they have right now is we know that a player is gonna be open. It's a 3-on-2. You are not allowed to feed that wide open girl on the back side of the field, which is the side that the ball's not on. You have to score off of a give and go. And, you know, it'll take some buy-in, but you'll see these kids just kind of run through it because they know the purpose now. It's been 2 years, so they got the hang of it. Boom, give and go. Got a goal there. Goalkeeper in the crease is going to UMass with, I think, a few Ontario gals. So again, working for our give and goes. We don't like that look. We keep working, and we stress getting in shape, so these girls are going to try and keep triangles a lot. But you'll notice that every time they pass, they're moving through the middle, they're keeping their eyes on the ball carrier, and they're backpedaling out in a way that they're positioned to catch and score. Nice cut through. This one, they're just super patient. Defense is doing an awesome job traveling while the ball is in the air. A little bit of a miscue, but they know, oh, we got to run this, get it to the top, get in our triangle. If you can stick with sort of these rules and encourage them, you'll find that they'll catch on. So now, same setup, we're working on pick and roll. So they are only allowed to score off of a pick and roll. I'm pretty sure we feed the backside in one of these, but I'll point that up to you. So we pass, we're in our triangle, we pass, we set a pick, and we should roll to the middle there. That was feeding the backside, which is technically not allowed, but it was a nice shot, so we let it. It made the cut. And same thing, we're picking, we're rolling to the middle. And these ones, like, we'll do 10 minutes, 3 different progressions. We'll keep score, so if the defense gets a stop, we'll put the scoreboard up. If the defense gets a stop, they get a point, and vice versa. And then here, going back to that flips and fake flips, that's the rule here. So no more give and goes, no more picks. We just have to get a pick, or holy smokes, we have to get a flip or a fake flip. And these are the same drills. This is a high school team doing it. That's like their signature move. I'm going to pull that back because they actually, so here's a great example of when Get Weird goes right. These guys came up with this on their own. We never told them to do this. If you watch, so 6 and 4 are going to have an exchange up top. And it's, 2-6 smashing. They came up with it on their own. They will try it in games sometimes. They get super excited. But because we've created this environment of like, have fun, take risks, try new things, they feel compelled to go ahead and create this thing within our structure that ends up being awesome. And they're fired up about it. The whole team, I turned off the sound, but the whole team goes insane when she scores that because they've been working on it for weeks. Here's a little keep away game. So this is, I should say, so this was filmed after practice last spring. So I will say the hustle in this isn't quite great, but these guys were champs enough to stay after and film some drills for me. So we'll cut them some slack. We've split them into 2 teams. You can manipulate the size of this box depending how much conditioning you want it to be. So I usually start about 10 by 10 on a more experienced group that I just want to add in a little bit of a conditioning component. We might go as big as 20. And with younger ones, we may bring it in just so they're getting tons and tons of reps. White team are split between this cone and that cone. And then the blue team are split between this cone. And it becomes a 2v2 ground ball. So right now there are no rules. It's just a ground ball. Oh, now there's a rule. So first rule we add in to teach skills is to kick before you scoop. So they have to kick the ball before they're allowed to pick it up. And we just want to encourage, this is sort of how we teach to work in pairs in a ground ball. We do not crush it. And most of these kids are soccer players. So that's something, but learning how to get comfortable, especially in the first few, this is a relatively new rule for us. So I think it's still something that the kids are trying to get better at, but I will say this is not our finest showing. And as they're coming in, like we're encouraging them to work in pairs. So lone wolf is a variation where the first player in has to pull the ball out of the circle. Her teammate is out. So whoever gets possession, teammate is out, and it becomes a 1 versus 2. So you'll see a double team happen here. So white wins it. That other white player should be getting out, and these 2 have to double team her. But again, working on the skill of getting over the ball, pulling it out of the pocket. And now here we got to do 2 passes. So if your team gets possession, 24 forgets, but she comes back in. And that's another variation that you can do. So you can do 1 pass, you could do 2 passes. Sometimes we'll go super specific and say you have to catch left and throw right. I wouldn't attempt that with lower level players, but for the high level, for the defenders that know that, and then, she has to pass with her right hand, I'm going to take her right hand away, can really foster some creative stick work. So we'll do a lot of different variations out of this, encourage creative stick work, and let them play. And this one's competitive game, so we'll keep score, or we'll say whoever wins the last ball, or sometimes they'll pile them. But we find ways to incentivize them to try and win the game. And they tend to buy in and work hard. The other great thing about this is you don't really have to run your team if you're doing drills like this, because they are working and they're smoked, and you don't have to waste time doing 300s, which my team would appreciate, never doing 300s again. Here's another keep away game. So this one's a little different. Instead of being 2 cage, this is 3v2 keep away. So the objective in this game, we'll split them into groups of 6, 2 teams of 3, so the extra player is out. And when they're in, they'll go for a minute, or we'll go continuous possession. But basically the team in possession of the ball has to count their reps, and it becomes a competition. So you'll immediately flip-flop. The team with the most catches in a minute wins. So you'll see here, and you got to get on the defense, but if it's a competitive game that they want to win, you'll see these guys are pretty smoked here. But your offense is moving the ball a ton. We'll sometimes do this even as instead of doing shuttles for the day, we'll warm up with this, because look at, that was a no-look pass there. All these passes. We've got this is a pretty high caliber of kid. I think the 2 twins are going to Penn. We've got another player going to an art school where she's playing. The girl with the ball there is going to a Division II school in the area. And here, so same kind of idea, but instead of our metric being passes like it was in this version, our metric in the next round becomes picks. So they have to set an on-ball pick, and that's what they're counting. And this is another great way. You want to teach your team to learn how to set picks, to learn how to be patient and wait for picks. Drills like this, you don't have to coach a lot. They're going to figure it out on their own. So every time they set a pick and the ball carrier comes off of it, that's a point for their team. So that would be 1 there. Now we got to make a pass and be patient enough for the picker to come. 2. And you'll see some moving picks. So I know if we have any refs on here freaking out, I get it. Let them work through it, because they're trying to figure out their timing here. And again, like you do this drill for 10 minutes in your practice plan, tons of picks, tons of passes, tons of catches, huge skill accelerator. And for you guys that are players, I don't really know what Corona is going to look for us long-term, but small groups seems to be the the most pressing thing that we're going to be able to do. So get yourselves in small groups and play games like this. You want to play 2v, if you've got a couple people in your social cohort in your neighborhood that you know are being responsible, awesome, get together, play a little 2v2. You got a dad that's brave enough to step in the net, use a tennis ball, play 2v2 and have him be the all-time goalie. I'm sure he would appreciate being involved. But all of these are fun little things that you can do that you're going to enjoy, and you're going to get so much better, especially if you can add in little things like doing these picks. Here's a fun one, and I think that, I guess this is the last drill we have to talk about. So this is another keep away game. It's called 2v2 Crossfire, and basically it'll look a little confusing, but I'll let it play out so you can watch through it. So it's a 2v2 on the inside and a 2v2 on the outside. So we have 2 blues here, 2 blues in, and they're all working together. 2 whites on the outside, 2 whites on the inside. And the way that you get points in this game is by the ball going from a post to your player out to the other post. So I'm gonna zip it and let you just kind of see it so you can get it sounds confusing at first, but you'll see it moves pretty quick. So all you need is 8 players. You could totally just use one set of posts, and they're just working on quick ball movement. White needs to be playing a little bit better defense here. Boom, so the ball drops. It's an automatic turnover, so you just saw a white player pick it up, and now we're going the other way. And they can make passes inside as many as they need to, but they only get a point if a ball goes from a post inside the box to the other post. These guys are crushing it. Both going on to play in college. The girl that just got the ball there will be playing at Ithaca this fall. So we got blue in possession, and now we start talking about 2-man games. So we say to these girls, hey, use picks to get open. Boom, she just came off of a pick. She was open, we didn't connect, it goes to white, but you'll see that you can build 2-man concepts. So you could say, you get the ball in, you've got to get a flip pass and then get it out to get a point, depending on what the skills are that you want to add in. And now they're setting picks. So you're going to see these two start working together a little more. Great opportunity for us to build the 2-man game without even really needing to talk about it a ton, because all these guys are thinking about is, I don't want to run when I lose this game. We make them run. Whoever, winners or losers, we always play for something competitive to make it that much more meaningful for them. So this one's a fun one. Our kids love this game. And again, you got 8 kids involved in a drill at once. You can set up 3 boxes, you can get everybody moving. You may need to injured players can always be posts on this. So tons of stuff to do. And I should just say, we are huge believers in all positions, no positions. So even at the high school level where my kids are specialized and are recruited to play midfield, every sort of full field type of drill we do, anything like this, anything that's like 4v4, we have our offensive players and our defensive players play both. In the shot clock era with the NCAA, defenders have to be able to carry the ball. They may end up on offense. People do sub personnel for sure, but if you are a defender that can't get the ball out, people are going to know that. They're going to leave you open. They're going to jump you, and you're going to see your playing time go down. So we really encourage our players. Like, my defenders should be just as skilled as my offensive players. My goalkeepers will jump in when we play little 3v3 games. My goalkeepers will jump in and play just to work on their stick skills. And we find that it makes us so much better in unscripted situations because they're confident and they're competent with the ball. I'll pop that up there just in case. I mean, we'll open it up for questions momentarily, but please feel free if you have questions about any of this, you want to see it. I love to talk lacrosse, so I'm happy to share any ideas that we have. We post drills and stuff online all the time, so if you are interested in these types of topics and ways to train yourself, definitely be sure to give us a follow because we are posting up there all the time. Let's see what's going on with these.
Awesome. Great job.
Thank you. I don't know if there's any questions or anything.
I don't know about that email inbox, though. Might need to spend some time on that later.
You know what's scary? It's actually in pretty good shape right now.
You know what? We had a comment, and it was from the start when we were having our stick length conversation. So the NFHS is 35.5 to 43.5.
So that would be the US one.
Yeah.
I know those numbers are very close to what it is in international. 32 is the number that keeps jumping out to me, but I haven't had to take one of those tests in a couple of years.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, so the Q&A is open. If you have anything for Kaylee, please pop it in there. I would probably recommend on that, if you're talking about neighborhood cohort and maybe put a dad in that, might be good to bring a video camera too, just to show
Please.
exactly how hard to play that game. But it's, you and I think we're talking Jamie Monroe. Like, he's done a great job posting some videos, and, he's not afraid to jump in. He's done it. But it gives you a kind of a new perspective as a parent when you do pop in that and you realize how hard the girls are working and what they're doing and how good they are.
And it seems so small, and it, like, my husband is not a lacrosse guy. He's become one by investing in the family business. But we'll do like little kid camps in the area just to introduce new kids to the game. And he's a champ, so he'll jump in the net and doesn't know what he's doing. They're using tennis balls. Every once in a while it gets a little crazy, but we have this funny picture of him where he jumped in and all we had was tennis rackets. So he's like the claw with 2 tennis rackets blocking it. He didn't get smoked. The kids had a blast. Everybody got better. And it was great. Like, the kids had so much more fun doing that. So if you're brave enough, I unfortunately just don't have the guts for it. But if you're brave enough to do it, go tennis balls. You won't get crushed even if you need to set up a line, but it'll make a huge difference. And you'll be blown away by how much better the shooters become. Because if they're hitting you, we got to talk about what they're doing anyway. They should be shooting around you.
2 questions. I'm going to avoid one of them for now.
It's the Oakville Titans. The question was favorite senior beatbox team.
What do you say about Steve, who actually asked the question? How old is your daughter? I'd like to know that before kind of we answer it, because that's she's 15. There we go. So what do you say about playing girls field, boys box, and boys long pole? I noticed my daughter's accuracy is not as good when playing all 3 sticks day to day.
Yeah, I think changing up sticks is definitely a challenge, especially if you're the type of, I'm a psychopath about my sticks. It's it's got to be exactly the way I like it. There's only one person that's allowed to touch it. So I think the more that, at minimum, if you can, and finding great stringer is actually a lot easier to do now. If you're not a great stringer, I would suggest finding someone, but getting the pockets to release the same, I would say, goes a long way. My thing is, as long as you can play all three, you'll be able to adjust and figure it out down the stretch, especially as a 15-year-old. But the more that you can, if you have one that's releasing high and one that's releasing low and one that's mesh and one that's not, that's a pretty significant difference. So I would probably try to make those things at least a little bit similar, where they're kind of releasing in the same way as much as possible. I mean, the reality is with a long pole, it's just built different because you have such long reach. It's going to go higher automatically. But with the box stick and the field stick, I think you can make them pretty similar because they've finally loosened up on our restrictions about stringing. And in Ontario, that's brand new. So people are kind of just experimenting with it. We've had a few years down here, and I think you'll find that you can really make them. I mean, I pick some up and I'm like, oh my God, this feels like a box stick, and it's bagged out. So I think you can, if you find good stringers. I certainly have someone down here that I can refer, but if you have someone that can do it, that would definitely be my number one tip on that.
Yeah. I think it's important too for stringing consistency. I mean, I was a fiend when it came to my sticks, for, I don't know how many years of pro, junior A, junior B, major, whatever it was. I don't think my stick changed from the time I was 14 onwards. It was taped the same way. It was strung the same way. And I did it myself, but to move towards that long stick question, I always used a head on my short stick before I put it on a pole. So I never strung it, put it on a pole, and then tried to play with it. It was always on a short first and then over. And I've told my guys that story many times, and a lot of them see a little bit more consistency.
Yep.
And obviously they've got access to way more heads and technology than we do now as well. But I always found it a little easier when we were banging them out on our short stick first and then putting them on the pole, just to find that rhythm, I guess.
It makes total sense because it's a different beast just with the huge. You had 6 feet to it. You got distance.
Yeah. I mean, it throws your throwing motion, your form. It's just completely different. It's good, different animal.
Totally.
Okay, let let me just see. Yeah, we got a few more minutes here, so other than any more Oakville Titans questions, we can handle some more. And for those that don't know, there's a friendly little rivalry between my team and the Oakville Titans team, who's Kelly's brother, who's on this call chirping me, runs that team. So, and if I scroll down, I'm sure I'll find Mom too. So, and
I like to think they're sharing. She might be at work actually.
Well, she is
catching the replay.
But you know what? I see a lot of different variety of attendees on here. So we'll go back because some of them joined late. How long did you play box for?
I started when I was 3, and so 10 years. Yeah, about 10.
When you're teaching the girls now, obviously you've been exposed to Canadian system, U.S. system. You've seen European ideas and different coaching methodologies. How much has the box influence came into your, not necessarily the way you teach, but how you teach?
Great question. I think so much of what I learned in the sport was subliminal, and I credit it all. It was just like girls lacrosse. We just didn't have the resources. There was like 4 people in the country that coached when I started, like at a high level. Yep. And most of them were in British Columbia out then. Like Ontario kind of exploded sort of with our generation. So I think so much of what I teach, I mean, definitely the way I coach offense is you could take it and put it into a box. Like it's all 2-man games, cycles, picks, that sort of thing. And I think just what I really got out of box, I just think about like how much we shot in practice. Even, I have these terrible memories of like getting on the floor at Tony Rose and just running around for a while, passing with throw to the coach, catch on the move, throw to the coach, catch on the move. And then, jump in with the goalie and shoot for, 50. You think about like a junior A warm up. Like when I go home now and I watch a junior A warm up, I'm like, holy smokes. Like no wonder Canadian kids are so good at shooting. Like we just don't do that. And that's something that actually Oakville Titans plug here, but we come home, we try to watch senior B to support my family's team. And I'm watching the warm up and I'm like, I got to start doing this again. Like no wonder these guys can score so much. And that's really one of the big things that we implemented as a non-negotiable at my high school last year, bring in the tennis balls, and we do 2 15-minute shooting drills. Sometimes it's just 10 if we're at a crunch for time, and we'll finish with 8 meters at the end of every practice. But we want our shooters shooting as much as possible. And I want, shoot on your own, but I don't know if they're going to have time with that when I already have them for 2 hours of the day. Are they going to go home and shoot? So we weren't working into our practice plans. Because, we can score, if we're shooting the same amount in a game, but we're scoring more, we're probably doing better than we were without it. And I think that's the kind of stuff that I really got from box lacrosse, or just like the scrappy ground balls, where like you don't really talk about how good Canadians are on ground balls. Like it's not, you think about Canadians, you think goal scorers. I think Canadians are pretty scrappy and great on ground balls, even prolific scorers. And it's because the ball just ends up in the corner a lot and you got to go get it out. So those things I don't think are traditional women's lacrosse, and they're definitely big pieces to what we try to do in our program.
Okay, so let me flip gears here, because you and I both went to school in the United States. We both saw a different version of it. We both learned way different things when we were exposed to it. So on the flip side, what was the biggest takeaway that the biggest American influence? Because, we go from region to region. You talk about BC. I was in Alberta as well, and like all these different areas where we go to coach and do different influences. Even putting this seminar together, I had to email someone saying, what do you mean by this? And they're like, oh, different meaning in Ontario. This is what I mean. Like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So what was your biggest takeaway, or what is your biggest find that you see in the United States?
I think sort of twofold. As a player, pace of the game, which I think most people say, was a big adjustment. Like I thought I was pretty sweet. I had done well in our local Ontario leagues. I played on the provincial team. I'd been with the national program. And then you get to the big leagues and you're like, oh, everybody's good. Like there's just so many more people that play here. So moving my feet was like huge, because I was so used to being able to just kind of stand and cradle, as much as I said not to cradle. That's why I won't let my players watch me play. And then on the sort of coaching side is just, I learned so much about defense. typically the sort of stereotype is like Canadians are known for maybe cross-checking a little more, probably because of our box background. And Americans are known for a little bit more checking, which when I first got there, I was like, oh my God, these are maniacs. Like they're just out of control, move your feet. But now that I've been around it more, and I like to play a style of defense where we're playing to get the ball back. We're not just going to survive. Like, I want to come get you. I want to take it from you. And I want to go score goals because that's the fun part. And with that learning, like I just didn't really know. I knew like, oh, you can't hit her in the head, but I didn't really understand like the technique of it. Yep. And I've dug in since then and like sought out a lot of it. I think has come from the men's field influence. So I remember jumping in on those drills and being like, oh, this makes total sense, putting that together. So I think that's like the level of defense here is it's fast, it's physical, and it's intelligent. And I think that's a pretty big adjustment. Even I guess like the trade-off is we're used to not having a ton of time with the ball, but dealing with 7 is a whole lot harder than dealing with 5.
Gotcha. Yeah, absolutely. Listen, we got no more questions in the box. We're approaching 5 o'clock, so we promised an hour and we're sticking pretty close to it. I got a quick thank to our sponsors, Uncommon Fit, Franklin Parr Team, Apex Lacrosse Events, Manitoba Lacrosse, Major Series Lacrosse, Sticks and Picks Podcast, and Bear Paw Lacrosse Events. Kaillie, I'm going to give you the last word on this, but thanks for doing this. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to assist us and kind of help spread this word and share.
Awesome. Well, thank you. There's nothing I like more than talking about lacrosse, and anything that's going to benefit it around the globe, I'm on board for. So please don't hesitate. If you have questions about things we talked about or just other stuff that you'd like to dig in on, I'm happy to share anytime. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Awesome. Thanks, Kaillie. Have a good night.
Thank you. See ya.